able to turn things around in the second, but unfortunately the damage was done early.
Yeah, it was. It was comprehensive, that first half from North Melbourne. And something else. They will go into next week's game, you'd think, as favourites. They'll have the chance next week to redeem from last year. North Melbourne make back-to-back grand finals with a 57-point win over Port Adelaide.
Alrighty, hello and welcome to the CREEDCAST. As always, my name is Dave and thank you for joining us for the last review episode of 2024. Unfortunately, your Port Adelaide ladies, they've had an incredible season, an incredible run through to a preliminary final, but they did go down comfortably, beaten by what has been the pace setter of the competition all year. North Melbourne Footy Club, who I think were 10-1 on the season, which that one being a draw, they were undefeated. I think it was 10 wins and a draw on the season. Obviously, have gotten through comfortably to a prelim final and comfortably beat us on the day, outclassed. A real lesson in football and where we want to be. There's a lot of positives still to take out of the season and even this game in of itself. Or maybe not a lot of positives, but just things that we know of what this team has been all year showed up in this game, both good and bad. But yeah, we got a good football lesson in this game, but ultimately a season to be proud of and one that I'm going to look back on fondly as we go forward with the growth of this team. I'm joined by Jamie / as I haven't even commented on this yet in our obviously pre-recording chatting, but as his t-shirt also says, he's dad.
Hi, hungry, I'm dad.
just an ultimate dad joke shirt. Like, is that might be the first dad joke ever uttered? I think there's probably a few, but I feel like that's one of the first
on
ones.
This pod?
No, I mean just in life as well. I think that's the first one I remember from as James.
Oh right, yeah.
I feel like that's the first dad joke I experienced as a kid was like being like, I'm hungry. He's like, I'm dad, and I'm like, you think about it for a second and you go,
yeah, you're just like, huh? Oh, no, but
yeah.
Hello to everyone and yourself. Yeah, listening or watching, whatever your proclivities are. But yes, alas, we here to review quite a unfortunate loss. We hit the end of the road, unfortunately. End of the line, and yeah, left to pick up the pieces a little bit, but like you alluded to, it's all not for nothing. There's a lot to take out of this season, and it's good to still keep the perspective of how the whole season went entirely, not just one game which ended in unceremonious fashion.
Mm. Yeah. But we'll review this game in this episode, but in a couple of weeks we'll review both the men's season properly and the women's season. So well, mostly, I mean, this game there will be a little bit of looking back on the season as it went as well, because there's a lot of things we've talked about week to week, both positively and negatively about how our game has developed this year and just the things that we still need to improve on. All of that was highlighted in this game, wasn't it? It was,
yeah.
We've talked about it. I think you started talking about it a lot, was like kind of the chaotic brand of our football, which isn't a negative. It's just more talking about the fact that we're still developing and we found a brand of football that worked for us this season that could get us for what we're doing. A lot of young players developing their craft. They kind of learnt that we can still work on things while we just gain grass and get the ball forward and get to a talented forward line and see if we can score and make up for some of those deficiencies in the fact that we don't have a great possession game yet. We've still got players developing their hand skills, their foot skills, all those things. And that really got highlighted in this game, I guess, in that negative aspect. I'll just bring up a stat to start with, which isn't going to surprise anyone. The marking, again, the kick mark stuff that the Kangaroos could do. And the marks for this game, the Kangaroos took 63, we took 21. So they tripled our output. And they averaged 41.5 for the season, so they took 22 more than their average, and we took 4 less than our pretty minimal average of 25. So their ability to do that, 11 marks inside 50 for them to 0 for us, which is a just shows that we couldn't. I mean, we were struggling to get past the forward half, and particularly in that first half when they really put the foot down.
It blew us out of the water.
Yeah,
Couldn't get our hands on it.
It was what Hawthorn threatened to do last week, by the way, which because there was warning signs last
And
week.
they
Clearly,
commented on that during commentary. Just North Melbourne actually put it in the middle, big sticks, rather than Hawthorn, who, look, they left the door ajar, which everyone was cognizant to that, or cognizant of. It just goes to show what can happen when you. In saying that too, which we also reviewed from the Hawthorn game, was they were kicking. Their attempted shots were more under pressure, whereas North were getting some fantastic looks very close to the goal face. So yeah, it makes it very easy to convert accurately when you're getting such a good look at goal.
Yeah, I was really impressed with their ability to create space and pull our backline apart. Like they just had players making, whether it be diagonal runs or just traditional leads or whatever into space because of just how quickly and how well because it was very methodical at times while also being, moving the ball reasonably quickly and just, it was just really impressive to watch and unfortunate being, obviously a fan of, but I mean, our realistic expectation going into this game was probably a loss as it was going into Hawthorn. But as we said after the Hawthorn game, anything's possible. So you went into the game with some hope, but if that's the thing that comes with these games, if the top team plays to their absolute best and we play to our absolute best, they're probably still going to win. But their absolute best is obviously going to test us. I think it was brought up in commentary that the Kangaroos are one of the
quite a chasm.
Yeah. The Kangaroos are a big pressure team as well. So one of the things that we found to be a leveling aspect of our game against sides above us was being just the better pressure and tackling and intensity side. The Kangaroos
bring possession.
Go
with it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you've kind of found yourself just sitting there going, well, they do everything we do well as all the things that we want to do well, and you kind of just sit there, and then you sit there and go at halftime and go, well, that's kind of why we're where we are. There was really no intense science or scrutiny to it. It was just like, this is just we reached our peak, and as a young side, that's nice to know that our peak can get better as seasons go forward. But this was the peak for 2024. This was unfortunately our peak, and we were well below a far better side that is clearly the pace setter of. Well, they've been a pace setter for the last 2 years. So grand finals last year, and they're looking to try and go one better this year.
Yeah. And Lauren Arnell alluded to what you just said in her post-match press conference, that there is a clear gap there. They're going to learn a lot, and they've seen it all on display as they've come up against them for the second time. Now, it did kind of have a similar vibe to the first game that we played against them. They just blew us out of the water early, and then it kind of stabilized after half time. And you just look around, and the age discrepancy, I haven't been on any AFL tables or anything like that, but I watched the replay last night. I didn't watch it live, I should say, to those listening. But you just look around, and there's senior players everywhere for North Melbourne, and albeit we have a healthy amount across each third. Yeah, they can only do so much, and the bulk of our side is that 18 to 21 age bracket, and I'm fully confident that they'll learn a lot and put it into action. We'll have another group of new, fresh faces come through. That again would have been from a footy pathway, much like your Goodies and Windows Brooksby's of the world this year. But I was just watching it. I was like, there's a senior player on screen. There's a senior player doing something good. There's a senior player. There's a senior player. Like it clearly makes a difference. Them, Brisbane, Adelaide, And I mean, like, it's no surprise. I mean, Geelong in a men's sense, and some of the other clubs, what Collingwood are going for this upcoming season and across the last two, seniority does get you most of the way there. in terms of a premiership tilt. The statistics back that up. And yeah, so it's no surprise the gap in skill, talent, pressure, the ability to absorb pressure, all of that went into it. It's not, it was no shock. It was just a bit disappointing that the game was kind of over as quickly as it was. But in saying that, I think the first half of the first quarter was a bit of a contest, and maybe they'd kicked one goal. And yeah, by the end of the first quarter, it was, the alarm bells were kind of already ringing.
Yeah. There was, I think the first 2 minutes of the first quarter, and it's going to sound like grasping at like whatever straw I can grasp.
Yeah,
but we got the ball forward and kind of.
Sorry, I had it the wrong way around too. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, like we did get the ball forward, and it kind of looked like, and I was like really impressed with just the fact that we started the game with a good attitude and intensity to the contest, but then just as soon as the Kangaroos started moving the ball and got the ball forward, and it was just like, they're pretty good at this football thing, and and then they kicked another one. I was like, oh no, and then as it our and their kick mark and their ability to take possession, utilize possession well, create space, and then capitalize on it. I think I put that almost exact words into a tweet actually on the weekend. They just did all the three pillars of a good game. Just good possession, good link up, and then being able to capitalize on those opportunities and create space. Like space is such a valuable commodity in AFL football, and when you've got players that understand the kind of triangles you can move on the field and create the space and make it look like you were always 2 or 3 players advantaged in any particular place on the field, whereas our players just looked.
We looked in
disarray. They were chasing tails so much. Like at one point they were talking about possession stats on the commentary, and it was like stark contrast. It was somewhere in the middle of the first quarter, and you just go, it's because we literally actually can't get to the ball. Like they're just 1, 2, 3 steps ahead at every turn, obviously taking their marks in those uncontested moments, and we just couldn't even get an uncontested mark, it seemed like, because it was just we were always under pressure, and then that was just their spacing versus our spacing, and that's just as you said, it's just experience. Like there's no science to it; it's just experience and learning the game and understanding. And then as experience comes, calmness comes as well. The whole game starts slowing down for you the older you get as a player, because you've got so much experience to reach back and take from. But all of our girls are just so, even there's the senior players, but a lot of what's around them is, players with 20 games or less, or 30 games or less, or mostly would be 20 games or less. Even Matilda in a second year, and Matilda in a second year is maybe at around 20 games now with the finals included. So, and look, there's got lots of things we can touch on it quickly now, just as a segue to it, because there's lots of things to be positive about going forward, with Matilda Schultz winning, Rising Star this year, and Shanae Goody just tonight being, I think, Players Association first year player, best first year player. So we've got 2 players that are kind of.
And I think she was the runner up too.
She was, with
for the Rising Star,
comfortably runner up to an Essendon player who I'm forgetting her name that came in third, but congrats to her. Same. But Shanae was comfortably runner up, but then I think Matilda took 57 of the 60 votes for the Rising Star, and then Shanae had in the 30s, and the Essendon player was down in the teens or early 20s in votes. So we comfortably had the 2 best players in the Rising Star award, as happened in year 1 as well. I think it was Hannah Ewings and Abby Darrick were 1 and 2 in year 1 as well. But so lots of things to look forward to, and Mark of the Year shout out to Matilda as well, which we all knew was eventually coming, although there's still the nerves when she didn't win the weekly award. I was just like, I fucking hope she wins it for the year, but it was clear. Great speech as well. I don't know if you've caught that
but
yet.
As modest and as humble as we've come to know from Tildes, with a little bit of comedic charm.
Unintended, like when she kept on forgetting what to say, like the sponsor thing, like she just she Yeah, she. For those that didn't watch the AFLW awards last night, she won the Rising Star one first. Is the first one that was announced, and she just completely blanked on like she was going to thank the sponsors, and she's just like, "What's the word? Oh, sponsors!" And the room laughs and everything. And then she gets up to accept the Mark of the Year award, and she goes, "I'm going to get this right this time. So thank you to the supporters. I mean the sponsors." And like, so she got it wrong again, even when she thought she was going to get it right. And I think whoever the Adelaide player that won Goal of the Year, she got up and not wanted to give Adelaide players any love at any point, but I will be objective and say she got up and just put emphasis on thanking the sponsors, and like the room, there was a little bit of knowing chuckle through the room and to the little inside joke that had built on the night. So that was all from Matilda's, as you said, her charm on stage. So shout out to her, and yeah, rolling it back. There's lots of things to be positive about going forward, but yeah, it really was just a game where the experience of a side that has been in premiership tilt mode for 24 months now, at least. I don't know where they were previous to last year, but they've been, from what I remember,
they've been building.
For a few years.
Again, Lauren Arnell, again, to mention her press conference, she alluded. Well, she didn't allude to it. She literally said, North Melbourne have been a side that have been aspiring to play finals, lost to semi, lost to prelim, lost to grand final. It just commenting on the fact that they've had to build their way up.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing the same thing. And quite a barnstorming first attempt at it, I will say.
Oh yeah.
But you got to pay your dues in this type of thing. You got to be pretty fortunate. Like I'd be surprised to look back at any team who's just been a complete flash in the pan across maybe a 3-year period, like just to come out 1 year and just go from nothing to winning a premiership. Generally, you'll have teams that have played finals, then fallen out of the 8, and then have rebounded.
Mm.
Like that certainly happened, but not to come from absolute obscurity. I'd be interested to see if there is any examples of that. Usually you need a bit of heartbreak along the way in finals to build yourself back up. I'm
thinking back through the last 20 years of men's, and I'm just like, people talk about
everyone's had a bit of a go before they've done it, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, even people say
even the Bulldogs, they had, I think they played finals in 2015.
They lost to the Crows in that really close final at I think over in Melbourne, I think it was. But that was on my brother's. That was on my brother's 21st night, and like a bunch of them were huddled around the TV before the at the start of the party. And I'm huddling behind, going, "Fucking hope they lose and ruin my brother's 21st," which they didn't. But I love the guy, but I would have been. He understands. He's a fucking Crows nuffy, like I'm a Port nuffy, so he gets it. I think I texted the family after obviously our men's prelim this year, and just said no one talks to me about football for the next week. And I caught up with my brother about a week later, and he goes, "I was so close to texting you back. Why?" Like with a real sarcastic tone. I was like, "You fucking dickhead." So that's us. Yeah. But even like Geelong in 07, like I'm not wanting to talk about 07 too much, but they came from pretty low down on the ladder in 06, and it's talked about a lot, like how they bounced back and had this dominant season.
Yes.
04, obviously, we played them in a qualifying final, so they finished top 4. 05, I'm pretty sure
that was Nick Davis game.
Yes, I was trying to think of the name. Yeah. I kept on going Nick Day. I'm like, no, it's not Nick Day. It's Nick Davis.
He was a kid.
Yeah. He was. Yeah, definitely not playing. There's some really, really bad draft rules happening if he was playing that game. But he maybe could have had the talent for it at fucking 2. I don't know. But yeah, that Nick Davis game. So the Geelong had a couple of years of heartbreak in those years as well. So because they ended up playing the prelim of against Brisbane in the year we won the grand final as well. So they had finals experience. They dropped down, as you said, and then bounced back up. We played, and I brought this up on Twitter on the weekend. A peculiar quirk of history now is our AFL men's and AFL women's side both experienced their first AFL finals loss against the Kangaroos, which is we obviously in the 1999 made finals, lost to the Kangaroos, who went on to win the premiership. It would be an even more peculiar quirk if the women's side goes on and wins it this year too.
Well, and they smashed us in '99 too, didn't they?
44 points, I think it was, something like that.
Close.
Yeah, it's very close. Yeah, very comfortable and pretty much from I vaguely. I mean, I was fucking 11. I vaguely remember watching it, and
I was tiny.
I'm pretty sure I stopped watching halfway through. So it was that kind of game. Like I was 11. I wasn't the nuffy. I was a fair bit of a nuffy as a kid, but if my team was getting smashed, I usually went around and went outside and kicked the footy to belt out frustrations into some leather. But yeah, it's we dropped down in 2000 to 14th or something like that, and then bounced back up to finish top 4 in the next 4 years. So who knows what the future is for the women's side? But yeah, there is the path to premiership glory is never just a nice, smooth upward hill. Maybe Crows AFLW fans will tell you that, but they also won a competition that was half the size and haven't won or even made a grand final since it's a full-size competition. So just putting that out there for the...
I was wondering how you were going to shoehorn that in, because we've definitely had that conversation behind closed doors.
Oh, yeah, no, I had it in my head. It was going to come up, and it just managed to come up organically there. Haven't made a grand final. Have lost 3 straight prelims. So it just seems like that curse doesn't. It's like, how does it fucking feel?
So yeah, for any of our clearly Port Adelaide fan listeners, if any Crow supporter wants to talk to you about our men's team choking in prelims, then while also wanting to shove 3 women's premierships in your face, then I guess we follow the same metrics when it comes to choking in prelims. But that's
had a halftime lead.
Note.
Had a halftime lead this year too, didn't they? Like, Jesus Christ.
Not to deflect it all, but no. But I mean, speaking of halftime, just to draw it back to our own bubble for a moment. But like you mentioned off the top or close to that, we weren't expecting to win coming into this game.
Mm-hmm.
We were hoping for a decent crack, and to go into halftime with only 2 behinds on the board, after, like, I fucked up before. We had that 2-minute period, then we got smashed out of the water, and then we held sway for the rest of the first quarter. I had it the wrong way, and then you're like, all right, because we've been prone to a bad start this year, and we've generally been able to recover.
That West Coast game is a really good example of, with 3 goals 2-0 at quarter time. Yeah. So that's
3 goals 1, 3 goals 2, somewhere in that ballpark. But it's just we thought we'd learnt a few lessons against some of these better sides, where at the start of the season we did cop a loss like this, but. Yeah, although they'd chucked a few on us early, we'd steadied the ship a little bit just to kind of see it happen to a similar extent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 4 goals 2 and 4 goals 2 for the Kangaroos in both of those quarters. So, that was a little disappointing. And then, you're just playing for pride at that point in time. I would have hoped for a smaller margin, of course.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nitpicking a little bit, because it's all kind of in perspective. And I don't think I saw any negative commentary in regards to our side from our fans afterwards. It was all very pragmatic. Like, we've had a good run. We've just simply come to the end of the line, played a much better, well-drilled side, and we just couldn't get anything back on them. We had our chances to make our score look a bit better. Obviously 11 shots to 18. So we definitely created a lot of chances in that second half. We just couldn't capitalize on them. And
that Mark's inside 50 stat kind of speaks to that. It's just like it was all general play under pressure, out of stoppage, all that kind of stuff. There was nothing. We didn't generate a good chance, like a good, set. We didn't have stable play going inside 50 very much compared to theirs, which was very much pick out your targets because they always had them. Yeah.
No, and yeah, they were well set up for most of the game to
Mm.
that chaos, like throw caution to the wind type game style.
Yeah.
Where we find a lot of frustration in the men's format. Bomb it long type
Yeah.
game plan. And yeah, we know the differences between the men's comp and the women's comp. It's a lot more unacceptable in the men's comp because, like you said, in regards to the AFLW, we played a game style that worked for us where we are, and in the context of the competition.
Mhm.
Good sides like North Melbourne, they can set up for it, but a lot of the time it will kind of level out with the type of players that we have at our disposal. But I mean, yeah, at quarter time, I think it was a third of our side didn't have a touch.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of the forwards, especially like I think Gemma.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she'd had a touch by quarter time, and it wasn't because she does try to get upfield a bit and stuff at times, but it didn't even.
Yeah.
The ball didn't even get past halfway a fair few turns, so it was hard to even get your forward players that like to get up the field a little bit. You actually have to get it to like that. She's not going to go to the defensive 50
She's
unless
not going to go half back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, you've got to have someone. You've got to have those players in the back lines getting the ball out, and again, they were just under so much pressure from a clearly far more experienced and well set up side that. There's no blame to any particular person. It is just where our sides are at. The one thing I know you mentioned about fans being pretty pragmatic, and overall all were. In that first half, though, I was bristling a little bit, and people I think were being a little bit facetious and just it's kind of saying things to try to deal with the pain, and I understand that because I do that a lot too. But the amount of people doing Port and prelims, it's happening again. I was just like, no, don't put the ladies in that. Like they were, their effort, their effort to get there and their effort even within the game is just a complete 180 from some of our questionable efforts in prelims in the men's side. So I didn't want to. I was just like, no, this is a completely separate thing. We can compare positively. We can compare positively about team cultures and stuff like that. But yeah, because there were some people genuinely just being like, oh, this is really frustrating, and oh god, it's just like poor. Like, I think it was just getting that frustration out, but. I was trying. I'm very conscious to not do that because it is just you don't want to.
Perhaps some people actually thought there was a genuine chance of a showdown grand final. The novelty was attractive, but I don't think that was nowhere near reality for me. You're probably severely underestimating North Melbourne's ability, and furthermore, they don't have a pre-finals bye in the AFLW, and North Melbourne didn't have to play. 3, including the last round of the game, 3 hot weather games in a row, 2 of those in state. Now, I say that they've, again, to quote Lauren Arnell's post-match press conference, I think the journos tried to bring that up as a little bit of an out or a question.
And
like she said, we did still finish the game well. So,
yeah.
I've kind of contradicted myself a little bit.
I think they actually, some of them started a little leggy, I think. I think the start was a little...
We did look flat. Yeah, we looked flat-footed. We did.
Brought up in the commentary a lot too.
That had just had played 2 hot, combative finals, and
And GWS, the GWS game,
just a reality.
The GWS game was a bit of a final in of itself, like the way that we came back and won it late and got ourselves a home final. That's 3 close games. The Richmond final was comfortable in the end, but it was competitive. So that's 3.
They hit the front.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
They kept coming at us. And perhaps North Melbourne took the foot off a little bit in the last quarter as well, knowing that they were well and truly home. I think they managed most of the second half, to be fair, and that's not to say that our efforts weren't credible. Like we played the game that, as you can only play the game that's in front of you. North Melbourne played the game that was in front of them in the first half and got themselves a game-winning lead in a half, and I think they managed the second half knowing that they had
1 3/4 feet inside the door for the grand final already at halftime, and in those conditions, and knowing that they don't want to, they don't want to do a crampy hamstring late because they've run someone into the ground needlessly. Like I'd want my team to do the same thing. So, but yeah, no, we did at least push and kick. Unfortunately, 2 goals 9 was quite inaccurate, and as we said, that's just down to the pressure and the fact we didn't get clear good chances. But yeah, the conditions, North Melbourne were fresh and eager to play that game. And I think we were obviously eager to play that game. Clearly, like our team has had a great attitude and commitment to the cause all year. But I even saw, I think in the first half, and I was just congratulate them, Matilda got outmarked twice quite easily. And again, like her marking is something we've talked about her and working on improving, and she talked about it last night when she was accepting her Mark of the Year award. So we all know these things but she got bodied a little bit in the marking contest. That was indicative to me of a little bit of legginess. There was a few moments of that. Mm-hmm. She's obviously I'm not picking on her, but she is the star, and she's the one we really see it. Like, you don't want your tallest person on the field and one of the tallest people in the competition who is quite dominant with it. She's quite good with her body and contested possessions and everything she does is really good. So when she got
to finish it off.
Yeah. So her getting bodied in a couple of marking contests by players either, of similar size or clearly a bit smaller and getting outmarked, I just thought was indicative of just how the first half was going. It's just we were kind of shell-shocked, a little flat-footed, probably. Yeah. Even if in your mind you're sitting there going, yeah, we're ready for this prelim, we're so stoked to be here. It's actually different when your body that has been through 3 weeks of grueling contests gets to the actual over the white line and against this team of
it's almost like an out of body experience. Because on one hand you're going into a big game, or not even just a game where you're just like, I'm pumped to be here. I feel good. We're going to have a great crack at it. And then it starts and it's just getting out of hand quickly. And you're like, what is happening right now? It's certainly, again, scrubber playing low-level sports my whole life. But whatever level of sport you play, you've definitely had those moments where you're like, fuck, I came into this day feeling really good and had a really good vibe. And then it just totally goes the opposite way, and you're like, "What the fuck happened today?"
I was part of
Australia in the Perth test, maybe.
God.
At the end of day one, I kind of had that.
Well, the end of every day of that test match.
Yeah. Well, but like,
I've been part of a cricket team that was
tea time on tea time on day one. We're like, cool. India are right where we want them. And then, what the fuck happened there? So, we've all had it. You're feeling great. You think things are going to go well. And then it just goes the complete opposite way. And it's like, you're watching. It's a weird, situation to be in. And, we've all been there in some capacity.
Yeah, I was when I was playing A5s cricket a few years ago. So real, as you're saying, low-level sport, like really the lowest of low. And I can't remember.
Shit.
Yeah, I can't remember what total we were chasing, but it was probably like maybe 1-4. Like it was one of those ones. If you have a decent performance, I'm obviously batting down the order, so I'm not planning to be part of the chase. Really, I think we were all out for 20.
Yeah.
And I'm like, as the wickets are falling, I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta get my pat. Like it just, it was an out of body experience.
To play his tea here.
Usually with my position, I was like, I'm gonna lay down under the tree for a while and watch the batting performance, and then suddenly like
Lamingtons.
Yeah, and the wickets start falling, and you go, fuck, I gotta. And he's throwing the pads on. It was an out of body experience because you're like, this isn't the way this is meant to go. So it was weird. I did make, I think, 2 runs that day. So and there's a lot of guys that got out for ducks, so I wasn't one of them at least. But it was still all out for 20, chasing what was not the terrible.
A modest total. In regards to one day wheelie bin grade cricket. I had a very similar instance last season from my club, Hope Valley. So we've all been there, and
gets you to the pub early.
A few girls. Yeah. Hey, that's right. It's a bit like if game cricket gets called off for weather or something like that. You've already told your partner you've got a whole day, so you just go to the pub or just chill out for a bit.
Yeah.
Nah, that's just typical
Love a rain
Aussie
out.
nuffy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything kind of alluded to the fact that we were going to go in so flat-footed. The energy seemed to be high,
Mhm.
but it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. I, like I've said, I didn't catch the game live. I had a wedding on Saturday, but I checked the score at quarter time, and I gave a bit of a
Yeah. Yeah.
like a. mm, um, and just kind of took a moment just to reflect then and there because I didn't. So I just yeah, it is what it is, and you go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a little bit of what I was like, and there was a lot. I think I got a message from friend of the pod, it's Wendell, and he made comment about frustrations with Port and prelims. And I just said, this is this was this is this we're at where we were meant to. We've exceeded our expectations. This is where we're meant to be at. Like this is our team this year. Um, don't compare them to that. Don't think of them in that way. Think of them as a developing side that's exceeded expectation. They've just come up against a buzzsaw of a side. Like this is the North Melbourne Kangaroos this year are, whether you want to talk about comparative to other sports, like this year, the way they've been playing and controlling games and dominating games and making sure they get the results they need. This is your Manchester Cities of the Premier League of the last 6 years without the illegal charges and oil money and all that stuff. It's the New England Patriots, and I wasn't even meaning to bring this up. I'm just wearing a Patriots jersey for tonight because I found it in my box, and I love Julian Edelman, who's on the name on the back. But it's the New England Patriots. It's your your Dodgers of this year, and then baseball, or your Detroit Red Wings of the 2000s, or whatever. That's the kind of team they're playing like they haven't won the premiership yet, but they're playing like that kind of team. And it's their week to week play. They're getting they're finding ways to get results. Like they came back against the Crows in the qualifying final because they found a way to get a result. They did that all year as well. They had some dominant wins over the course of the season, but they did have some close ones as well that they just found ways to get results. When you're playing a team like that as a team that's just a team that is still like the giraffe learning to walk, and we were like a giraffe learning to walk, just suddenly learned how to run and enjoyed it and had some fun with it. But we just this was just this is just our peak, and we exceeded expectations. We talked about it, and we'll talk about it in more of a general sense when we review the season as a whole in a couple of weeks. But our expectation this year was to push for finals and hopefully maybe sneak into the 8, and we've far exceeded that and had some great times along the way.
And I mean,
and this is going to be great for our growth as well. Like this experience of everything that we've had in finals, both win and loss, will be great for our growth.
Yeah, and like if the women's side, if that was our third prelim in the women's comp that we'd lost again, like you can go the port in prelims thing, but it has no connection to our men's side who have that perspective among fans and opposition fans.
It's just
because we've arrived at that point and then inevitably lost several times rather than the first time for our girls. And like you said, we're in a season where we've completely overachieved in regards to our initial expectations of the season. Yeah.
It is also something you hear players say a lot, and I don't have a specific quote. It's just something that's just popped up into my mind as we've talked about it. A lot of men's players will talk about prelims being the hardest games to win. Like they're the ones that just a weird contest because you've got the hope of a grand final ahead of you, but you still got to win this one. Grand finals, I think a lot of the guys in that 02 through 04 run talked about the prelim being the hardest game, and once they got through to that grand final, that kind of it eased a bit of pressure almost in a way. The grand final was still an incredible contest, obviously in 04, and we're just talking about men's in the context of experience of prelims. And so that's the thing, so that translates to women's too, like the prelim finals. And they talk about this in a lot of sports actually, where it's just the prelims or semi-finals in FA Cup or whatever comparison you want to do. That last game to get through to the big game is such a hot contest, and it's a weird contest because you're so close to that game that you actually want to play in against another team that's got that same weird vibe, and it does make for the ultimate contest. But they are hard; they are very hard games to win. And as a lot of coaches in a lot of sports say, any sport at the highest level, each individual game is actually very difficult to win. Like each game takes meticulous preparation, and once you've got a good side together, then the process becomes easier, and maybe the results start flowing. But yeah, winning professional sports is just a hard thing to do. It takes a lot of moving parts, and the fact that our growth has been to start learning how to win these games, then start learning how to win more consistently. And I hoped this year to have 5 or 6, maybe 7 wins. We got far more than that, and we got a couple of wins in finals. Like that's the ultimate thing too, is finals experience. I was just hoping for one game, maybe push for finals, get in, maybe get one game, maybe we'll get bounced, because I was expecting to be playing an away final in the first one. So the fact we got to play a home final, like I got to go, like that was great. I thought we were going to play an away final, possibly lose, hopefully just be in a contest, and then that was going to be like, oh, we get finals experience. That was my genuine expectation for this year. We won. We managed to learn how to win enough to guarantee ourselves a home final. Won that one in a very good contest, but won convincingly in the end. And then we had the incredible experience of an away final, a lot of attrition, a lot of backs against the wall, and then we have a record-breaking comeback to win that. That's a different kind of experience in of itself. It's learning how to win with your backs against the wall, and then losing comprehensively to a far superior opponent will give them first-hand experience of what it takes to win that last game as well. They got to watch firsthand that one of the best teams in football at the moment go about their business. So as hard as it's going to be in the raw moment of it, in the months to come, they'll start looking back a bit more objectively, hopefully, and going, okay, there's a lot of, I got to firsthand experience of what it takes.
Yeah, this final series was one of the biggest free hits that you could ever ask for. And I've compared this season to 2013 Port Adelaide. And again, we kind of overshot where everyone in the AFL landscape thought we were going to land in 2013. And then we ultimately, albeit in a semi-final, came up just against a much better side who knew how to win finals. And this is what happened here. But even you talk about growth and learning and improvement, like I've mentioned it, I think in the last couple, but definitely after the Richmond elimination finals, like I even saw players, particularly young players, trying to broaden their horizons in a gameplay sense in finals. Your Sinead Goodies come to mind, and yeah. So if you're already trying to apply what you've been training and broadening your horizons in a gameplay sense, more of that possession type football, or changing the angles, looking for a bit of possession, because that's what we sorely needed. When they banged on a couple of goals, we just needed to hold sway. The problem is we don't know how to possess the ball because our skills don't allow for it, whether it be by foot or our marking ability. But like I said, I've still seen some of our players try to broaden their horizons in that regard, and that's what gives me confidence that they're going to get to work, and improvement is inevitable. Probably shouldn't think like that, or it's a risk to, but there's a lot of source material here which would suggest that things should get better. And I mean, especially when you include some of the players that we've got to return, and the squeeze for spots, and we're over the next couple of years, we might find that some people that we actually are quite fond of may actually be not playing due to the fact that we'll have younger, more highly skilled players. And this is probably just skipping ahead to maybe season review type stuff. But I guess the crux of it is that I've seen improvement. I've seen us overshoot where all of us had our expectations. And then even in finals, I've seen players trying to apply new learnings to their game style. And yeah, that just suggests a decent next couple of years that we've got to look forward to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. There's a lot to, and I think when we get to our votes, and I don't know if there's anything in particular on the game that you want to chat about before we get to the votes, because I know there's a couple of players that you just talked about, players growing in real time in finals, and there's probably a couple in my votes I know that I'll mention that kind of that tangent on. So, did you have anything else on the game, or did you want to get to the votes?
No, not except for North Melbourne got away with quite a number of throws, but that's neither here nor there. In a 57-point loss where we were clearly beaten by skill, wholly and solely, it's a bit clutching at straws. But I definitely did see a few things where I was like, okay, well, and again, like very similar to the Hawthorn game. I thought we got pinged holding the ball after we clearly handballed it. So just a couple of frustrations. Didn't really affect the end result, but just wanted to quickly, weave that
again.
one in
I noticed that
it
seemed like zone on the field, and whoever the controlling umpire wasn't, that is not like there's a real discrepancy that you notice more than in the AFL men's game. I found because there was a few, because the holding the ball one is one I've really been watching, because they're really, really hot on it, and doing a lot of those ones where you get the handball away, but they've already made a decision. But then it would happen at the opposite end, the opposite 50, and you'd be like, wait, where's the whistle? And it just wouldn't come. And they're like, oh, they're letting them play. And it's just like, well, they're not doing it at the other end of the fucking field. So, it's just that kind of discrepancy really gets, like if I don't mind if the entire game is umpired in a certain way and there's some consistency. And we've talked about that in AFL men sometimes. It's like, oh, we see the decision go both ways. So we'll begrudgingly accept it because that's just the way that particular game was officiated. But just sometimes the stark contrast between controlling umpires at times is what's jarring to me when I'm watching the W. It's more noticeable. It probably happens in the men's, but it's just been more noticeable to me across this final series in particular. And certainly you've stood next to me at games in recent times where we've been pretty frustrated with the umpires there as well. So Anyway, votes. We good to roll with them. Our last votes of the year, obviously. Just to reiterate, we'll do our season reviews in a couple of weeks, both men's and women's. And anyone that's been listening, it's no secret that our votes every week. You'll probably figure out who's going to win both, I think. But we'll announce them, and obviously the goal of the year and Sweeney moment of the year for the men's as well. But for our votes for the last W game of the year, which has been really cool that we got 3 more than we maybe were hoping for at the start of the year. So honorable mention, I didn't quite get a couple of honorable mentions, I guess. One I didn't get into my votes, but I was very close to was Ange Foley. I think she had a great final series and a great finish to the year. Great experience and just, she upped her disposal. Like she was getting a lot more hands on the footy, which I guess it's going to happen when you're playing a better teams. She's going to be more involved in the play, like coming off halfback and whatnot. But I still think even some of those games are having a bit of, in the middle of the year, she wasn't as noticeable to me, but as the year went on, she got managed at some point during the year as well.
She did, yeah.
Clearly to have her fresh for finals, and it worked. I think she led our meters gained, actually, and that's what's crazy is that usually I think the meters gained leader is usually in votes, but I didn't get her in there, and I'm still not sure if I should have or not, but she's just my honourable mention. But my one vote I've got was Shanae Goody. Don't think she had I don't think anyone in a finals loss as heavy as it was. It's not like everyone had an exceptional game, but I think her final series, just watch her, just how she moves and how she kicks the ball and disposes of the ball. She's got, we've said it all, I've said it a lot this year, and I think you have as well, just a real professional way of going about it. We've talked about the fact that she's one of these pathway players that have come through as she's 18 now, having spent the last 8 years of her life, so pre-teen years into development football years, watching this competition and developing with knowing there's a pathway, and you can see it in just how confident she is in her play. And Yeah, seems a real character and quite confident as well as a player and as a teammate and part of the squad. So, um, yeah, she had the 14 disposals. She had 9 tackles, which led pace the team for tackles. So she was part. I mean, there's a lot of unfortunately a lot of tackles were just because we were chasing arse the entire game, but it is that's part of it. But she had nine of those disposals she had were contested, which obviously I think a lot of our players' possessions were contested. To be fair, but yeah, she just 4 intercept possessions as well. Yeah, she had the she just a player that I think has had a great year and obviously capped off by being Players Association best first year player. And she snuck into my votes for me. My 2 votes I gave to Molly Brooksby. I think she, like a lot of our defenders, had a fair bit of chance to get hands on the ball. She had the 12 disposals. I think it was 12.
Yes.
Where is my? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
And she was one of the few players that went above 50%. She actually went at 75%, which as we've said a lot in the men's, as the disposal numbers go up, that the disposal efficiency stat becomes even more important. And I think it was really great that she managed to dispose of the ball so well in a game that not many people were at a greatly efficient rate. 4 rebound 50s and 304 meters gained, and just capped off again. She's a first year player as well, alongside Shanae Goody. Both of them nominated for. Shanae came obviously second in the Rising Star, but Molly was nominated this year as well, and capped off a really good year. And again, I think she's going to learn a lot from having played a team like this in that back line and things she learned in that game to deal with it. But she actually, I think, played a reasonable game in amongst all that as well. My 3 votes, Maria Maloney, who's just one that's come on really nicely this year. I'm really pleased that she got the shout out from Matilda last night for the kick that gave her the mark of the year as well. Matilda shouted her out in a accepted speech. So,
good on her.
In her thank you, she goes, she's running through and she's, thank you to Maria Maloney for kicking me the kick that gave me so a great show. Because there's a lot of people out there watching AFLW awards that Port fans that may not even know her name, and she got a little moment because the camera flashed to her and everyone's giving her a high five. So it was cool. Like Maria Maloney is one of those unsung heroes coming into this year that's really put her name in lights for me. I think she's really come on well and made herself an integral part of this side. 13 disposals at 53%, so she just got above the 50% mark that I was just talking about. 6 tackles, 5 clearances, 9 contested possessions in that as well. Just a kind of classic Maloney game we've come to love this year in a tough contest. But she was one of those ones that even, again, would love to see pressure act numbers because she was just one I noticed a lot watching the game. I was really just Maloney was there a lot, and without having those pressure act numbers, we don't know, but I appreciated her being across the 4 quarters pretty present in the game. My 4 votes, Abby Dowrick. She led the team for
I know who your 5 is.
Yeah, I did. That's pretty obvious, I reckon. I think anyone who listens to the podcast knows how much I love my 5 voter, but we'll get there. Abby Dowrick for 18 disposals. So she led the team for disposals, but I think a lot of those came later in the game, which is why she's not the best on. She's still found a way to have an impact, but unfortunately, I think in the first half didn't see her enough. But she ended up with the 18 disposals, 7 tackles, 242 gained. 4 clearances, obviously, in amongst those 18 disposals, she had 13 contested possessions. She had the 5 inside 50s. A pretty classic standard Abby Dowrick stat line. She often, we've started saying she's starting to go past 20 at times, but we want to see her do that a little bit more. We look towards, I looked last night and watching the AFLW awards, and completely objectively, I say Ebony Marinoff at Adelaide is a fantastic player, and she's obviously been in the competition since the start. And you've seen her numbers go, and she had a career best year for disposals at 30 a game. I think it was 16 odd were contested and tackle, and but she's built to that.
You just have to look at North Melbourne from this game, like their best performers for the day. Those are
that's the numbers.
AFL men's type numbers, like Marinoff has just said.
Yeah, and she's fantastic. So, but she's built to that, and she's 27 now, I think, at Marinoff at 28, and Derek's 22. So she's got fight. Like if she goes at this pace and they work out a way to make sure your best ball handlers are getting more of the ball, and you kind of work out your midfield mix and all that as we go, she'll get
And
there.
we're not
But
high possession right
yeah,
now, which is
that's it.
well noted. So
Yeah, yeah. So we'll get it. But yeah, she's yeah, it was a pretty reasonable Derek stat line in the end. So, but as Jamie said, yeah, Piper Window's my 5 votes. Well, he didn't say it, but he I think that I assume that's who you were guessing. Yeah.
yes, it
Um,
was. Yeah.
she was involved from minute dot, I think, and just she again, kind of like Maloney, is like she's one unnoticed across the 4 quarters. Like she was cracking in that first half when we were a little bit flat-footed. Like Windows, one of those ones that was I was noticing trying to generate a little bit of like intensity and kind of like putting a marker down for what. And I found that incredible from another first-year player. It's actually like looking across her body of work this year. It's just amazing that she didn't actually get a Rising Star nomination, and she can't now because she's played every
You
game.
could, yeah, yeah,
Um,
and you could argue that that's purely just down to the fucking season length because
yeah, yes, yeah,
she's clearly like, say the season went for 15 rounds, her season has gone in an upward trajectory,
yeah,
like in terms of effort and output, in my opinion.
and
Yeah,
confidence.
she
Yeah,
was a couple of minor rounds short of getting a Rising Star nomination, and like you said, yeah, now she's ineligible.
yeah,
And look, at the end of the day, these things don't really matter, but it's just a nice feather in the cap for both the player and the club in a development sense.
yeah.
Yeah, so I wholeheartedly agree with your sentiments.
Yeah, but the way she's going to be the kind of player that could put herself up into, whether she's best and fairest for the competition, win a material in future years. I don't know yet, but she's certainly kind of got that confidence, attitude, commitment to the contest, and all those things that we'd love to see out of like all Australian kind of contenders.
And
And
trying to burst out a contest too
yeah,
already. So looking forward to how
some of
that
that core strength is
manifests.
really already quite good
Mm-hmm.
for such a young developing player. Still,
Confidence
yeah,
and experience, and yeah, could be a delight to watch in
yeah.
that regard.
Yeah, she had the 14 disposals, 11 of those contested again. A lot of players had some high contested possession numbers in their disposal numbers. She had the 8 tackles, which was, yeah, just one below Goody, who led the team for tackles. She had 5 clearances as well, 8 intercept possessions, which led the team, and 242 gained, which, as I said earlier, with Ange Foley's honourable mention, Ange led the team with 340. So, Piper Window's numbers were pretty up there for as far as gaining grass goes. But yeah, just across, like, yeah, she disposal numbers less, but just I think the 8 intercepts kind of that led the team kind of indicates that she was just finding ways to try to get in the game and try to turn some stuff around. It's pretty obvious early, as we've mentioned, as we were talking about the game earlier, that it wasn't going to go our way, but she was in the contest from the start, and honestly, she was one of the ones I noticed most, particularly in that first half, just trying to. She was one of the few that I could not accuse of being flat-footed. I'm not going to accuse anyone of not trying, but she was one of the few that actually looked like she had was ready, like had the white line fever and was ready for the game. Like she was, yeah, ready for the contest and wasn't over. And particularly impressive for me is the fact that she wasn't overawed at all by this North Melbourne team. She was
Yeah.
ready to crack in, and her attitude was on point for such a young player going against as we've said, a clearly experienced and premiership tilt team that the Kangaroos are. So there's a lot of that goes into her getting the 5 votes. But overall, I'm just really, and that's 3 first-year players in my votes there as well. So I think that's a good sign going forward. And as we were talking about the positives earlier, that's kind of the things you look for. And as much as it was a down day, yeah, it's pretty impressive to see some of these young players getting amongst it.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, not a Yahtzee, just about the same players, different rearrangements though. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So few honorable mentions being the last opportunity to. My main one goes to Brooksby because I had
Mm-hmm.
her out. Yeah, obviously the ball lived down that area a lot for a large portion of the game. Meters gained probably inflated because of that. But like you
Hmm.
said, the disposal efficiency is fantastic, and she's got a clear, defined role in our side as a first year player.
Hmm.
Again, similar sentiments to Window. I look forward to how that manifests itself over the next coming years because she's going to be consistently exiting the ball from defensive 50, and if she's using the ball effectively like that, um, it's it's a real calming influence once the players around and ahead of the ball kind of get to the level
Hmm.
in regards to your marking ability and things like that, just to connect. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, just had her slightly out. My other honourable mentions go to Ella Bogue and Tegan Jermack for having 7 marks between them in a
Hmm.
game where we had quite a low number of marks. And then my other
That's two.
honourable mention was
Yeah.
oh sorry, yeah,
I
you
said
go
that's a
before I
third.
move on.
That's a third of our marks between them. So,
That's
yeah,
exactly right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. A couple of impressive ones too in there, and then Cheyenne Hammond for having equal best tackle numbers
Hmm.
with 9. Just a few
I
standout
actually missed that,
stats.
but yeah, I
Yeah, I
love.
think she had a bit of a job on the day, and it's just one of those things where some of those players that I mentioned, they didn't have high disposal numbers, but just some stats that stood out to me when I was
Mhm.
trawling through. Um, but Brooksby, the obvious unlucky one in regards to my votes. Potentially a bit of a nepotism vote with Schultz at 1. I thought she clearly, it wasn't a thought, she clearly did dominate hitouts.
Yeah.
Very low disposal game for her. But I do note that all of them were just about contested. And then she did um, get herself involved with clearance and inside 50s. She had, I think, 4 clearances and 7 inside 50s. So just some of those things. 246 meters gained too.
Mhm.
So when she did gain possession of the ball, she did her best to get it in an area where we like it. Not her best game by far, but I thought we could have taken more advantage of her hit out dominance because she had just as many hit outs as North Melbourne's top 2 uh,
Mhm.
rucks in that regard. I think they had 3 players who ended up with hit outs, North Melbourne. And yeah, so uh, number 2, I've given to Goody there for everything that you said. There's not much more to really say on my next lot because yeah, you went through them all. My 3 goes to Dowrick. She went down for me just due to the fact that she was a bit of a non-factor in the first
Mhm.
half, unfortunately, which is a bit sad to say. And credit to her also for then busting her ass to get into the game and I think end up leading our fantasy points. Yeah, if you want to take note of that, anyone listening
Yeah,
or watching,
she did. Yeah.
uh, yeah. So she ended the game. The stats at the end of the game look good for her, but just watching it yesterday, yeah, unfortunately, just due to the fact that it was predominantly a half of football.
Mhm.
Scary in its own right in relation to what you said about where and what we think she is capable of in future.
Mhm.
If she can bridge that gap that heavily in one half, let's get the 4 quarters together and really see the magic happen.
Yeah.
Uh, my 4 I've given to Window, and my 5 I've given to Maloney. That's just the way I saw it. Yeah, Maloney and Window ever present across the 4 quarters. Really, like you said, would really, really, really like some of those extra statistics, particularly pressure acts, scramble gets, that type of stuff.
Mhm.
Because yeah, both of them would be up there for sure. I just thought, yeah, Maloney pipped Window at the post in a few moments. There's
Pip
not
to
much
window
that's
at the
separating
post.
them though, to be honest. What's that?
Sorry, just in my head, I just pipped window at the post. Just sounded like poetic for some reason. Anyway, sorry. It's
Footy
and
poetry. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm big on footy poetry. Yeah,
Yeah.
that just about wraps it up. Wraps it
Yeah.
up for me. Yeah, Schultz, Goody, Window. Oh no, sorry, Dowrick, Window, Maloney.
Mm. I love Maloney getting some love, and she's gotten into our votes a little bit more as the season's gone on, and it's really, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. She's one of those players that just, and whether it's just me not having, still learning coming into this year, I knew who she obviously knew the player she was and had watched her over the years, but she's really stepped up to be, with the young, some of the players coming through, whether players like her, she's had to elevate her game to make sure she's kind of stays and she's made sure she's an indispensable part of the side for me at this point. And
hmm
um, yeah, as the midfield grows and some of these players that are young and are in there, how that midfield makeup evolves will be interesting. But yeah, just her efforts in this kind of game and yeah, very just a proper Port Adelaide player that Maloney is. It's great. So
yeah, she's a
yeah,
workhorse.
yeah, that wraps it up for reviews for this season. It's both we've gotten to a point like 26th of November that it is now, late on Tuesday evening, 26th of
Mm.
November that we're recording this. It's incredible to be recording our last review of the year this late that we probably weren't expecting to. But then there is also the disappointment. It's like, God, it would be nice to be doing one next week as well. But um, ultimately,
Yeah,
very
I mean, you're gonna, yeah, you're right. Yeah, the majority of the time you're probably gonna do, and this is any footy podcast, so you're probably gonna end with a review of a loss,
yes, yeah.
somewhere wherever that lands, unless you don't make finals and you win in the last minor round game. But
Mm,
yeah. Unfortunately, that's just the way that sport goes, and I guess that's why we love it as well.
yeah.
Takes you on a ride.
I've talked to a lot of my friends about this over the years, over like when we're dealing with another Oregon Duck season going down the toilet. Hopefully this one is different, but I said we're all crazy because we're playing it's a rigged game, whatever sport we're following is whether it be
Yeah.
footy with 18 teams or college football with fucking 100 teams, but you've got realistically 10 to 20 that are competing any on five that are really good but yeah, NFL, American sports, it's 30 teams in each sport or 32 in some. Only
Yeah.
one can be champion. So every year you're supporting something that is very, very likely not going to end how you want it
The
to.
way you
So
want it.
we're
Yeah,
all we're
yeah,
all
yeah.
we're all fucking
That's
suckers. So but we love it. That's
for
part of the
sure.
that's part of
100%.
part of why ultimate success is so fucking sweet and why we will enjoy it when it comes because it is so hard to get. So yeah, but the journey and the journey. And I hope everyone's enjoyed it, both in the men's and the women's this year. The journey, even if it doesn't end in ultimate success, is always full of stories and full of stuff that you can and really intriguing stuff to talk about, and that's why we've done it. So, yeah, that's the end of the reviews. But we're going to continue just finishing off this episode by just chatting about obviously the AFL men's draft was last week, and Port Adelaide ultimately actually had a very, very successful night. I guess I can start off by saying drafts are, we don't know until they play. And so the
Yeah.
ultimate barometer of how good the draft will be when we know how Joe Berry and Jack Whitlock and Christian Moraes, and even if you want to go into the rookie draft stuff like how Tom Cochrane and Benny Barrett play if they get the chance at Port Adelaide. But just based on how what this was a stacked draft, as it's been talked about all year. So a lot of players slid. The players that are tied to either father son or next gen academy stuff makes it a really interesting thing as well because the first round blew out to 27 picks because of all the all the bidding that went on and all that stuff. So it's a very unique thing to Australian sport in that sense, or Australian Football League in particular. But overall, Port Adelaide got who they wanted at 15 in the end. It was pick 13 we had going in, but a couple of those next gen / father son picks earlier pushed our first round pick out to 15. We picked up Joe Berry at 15. He's a small forward out of Murray Bushrangers who has had the Robbie Gray magic. Apparently, he's a real Robbie Gray pick.
I just did an air crucifix for those listening.
Yeah,
For our Robbie, another Robbie selection to put in the black book.
Yeah. He and it was really interesting seeing Zach Butters in the draft room as well and involved in the process. A lot of people have made note of that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting visual.
Yeah,
very interesting. Yeah, situation.
Yeah, because it is that we can talk about that another time, but it is the thing that he is out of contract in the next couple of years, and a lot of people have talked about that. So there's the fact that he's involved in this kind of process is intriguing, but that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, Joe Berry at 15, he was ranked somewhere in 12 to 20 on in the pre-draft rankings of where he might get picked, and we'll talk about that more in depth in a second. But our next pick, which was at 33. We picked up Jack Whitlock, which was on the second night of the draft, obviously in the second round. He was a player that Fox Sports had rated as the 18th ranked player. So, and a player that, and this is a positive shout out to Anthony Alessiani, who does the pair. He was a bloke that he wanted picked with our first pick, and we managed to have him slide down to our second pick at 33, which just goes to show you never know how the draft night's going to go. With just what teams are actually looking for and who they pick, and with such a stacked draft full of midfielders and other talent, Jack Whitlock, who's a twin, and his brother got picked with the last pick of the first night, so it was a really interesting night for their family. But he's a tall forward, 200 centimeter player who's already fairly well developed and got a lot of. He's still got a lot of development to go, but he's. Seems to have some fairly good skills about him, and obviously the height. And we're obviously looking to possibly look to obviously Charlie Dixon retiring and some other players with unknown still at the moment, picking up another player to develop in that position in the key forward, tall forward area. And again, highly touted and someone that a lot of people thought was going to get picked top 20. And some people want to pick with their first pick. So a real steal as it was on the night. And another steal 5 picks later, Christian Moraes out of the Eastern Rangers. So Whitlock was out of the teammate of Joe Berry at Murray Bush Rangers, but Christian Moraes out of the Eastern Rangers footy club. A player that going into 2024 was touted as a potential top 5, top 10 pick it was his underage season a year before. Mm-hmm. This year, he's been moved around a little bit. His disposal numbers have gone down slightly. I think he averaged 25 odd, 26 odd last year, went down to about 23. Still quite good, but he's got such upside. Again, the fact that he was thought of as a lock for a first round pick going into this year, still was thought that he was probably going to go first round, even after this year has gone by. And he slid down to pick 38. We grabbed him. He was incredibly emotional on the night. They interviewed him on the night through a Zoom call or FaceTime, whatever you want to call it, in tears. So happy to be picked, and immediately got my love because he started talking about how excited he was to get across to Port Adelaide, a club with great culture, great fans. Made a particular note of that while he was still coming down from a few tears. So I really appreciated that. So. Yeah, 3 players on the night. Joe Berry, obviously our target with that first pick, but then we managed to get 2 players that were considered first round picks in the second round, and really made for, if you look at it, analysis pieces in the postscript of the draft, a lot of people were talking about us being real winners of the draft, which was interesting considering our crosstown rivals obviously had a big pick at number 4, and they've got a great player in Sid Draper, it looks like, but there are only other. It was funny watching the other side of town really complain about their list management because they couldn't get that ruckman. The one I can't think of his name. Dotson, yeah, who slid right down the draft, and it's just that is a positional thing. It's just like unless you really need a ruckman, you just Portland going to go after a ruckman because we might have last year. But this year we're kind of like, oh no, we've got Jordan Sweet and we're pretty happy with him. Vicentini we're still developing, so we don't need to reach.
And we got Soldo. Don't forget Soldo.
He's still
on our list, everyone. He's still there. He's alive.
He's gone in my mind, and that's no slight to Soldo, by the way. It's just like in my mind, I just keep forgetting that he's come back. He's back. But yeah, we don't need to draft a ruckman, so that is a testament to how positional needs are and particularly ruckman is even more of a niche need. You can pick tall forwards, key defenders, or small forwards and that have maybe midfield ability. Like you can pick guys that are just talent, but then when it comes to ruckman, it's just like and they really purely ruckman, it's harder to, you can't reach for them unless you really need them. So he slid down and you got Crows fans whinging about their list management even after they've had the fourth pick and all they've gotten is...
And got the guy they wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, and then their only other pick is a father-son in Tyler Welsh, which, I don't know how he fits in. Not that this is Crossbow, but yeah. Anyway, we had a nice win on the night.
It's an interesting contrast. Yeah.
Just the fact that
especially how the trade period unfolded, and then how it translated into draft night or draft nights. And I mean, bringing it back to us and our fan base. There's a lot of opinions flying around, and look, I'm not one to watch tapes of upcoming potential draftees and things like that. I only just have enough time to record a podcast one night a week. So, that's why, much like a lot of my opinions, that's left to the people who actually do the work or are actually involved in the profession. And yeah, as it turned out, there was a lot of conjecture over how the Houston trade unfolded, where it landed us in the draft, pick 13 and how it might, go back to 17 was one comment. But ultimately, I think everyone got who they wanted. Like I said immediately after that, regardless of the bidding and shit, clubs don't account for that. Like, I think it was Melbourne who bid on Levi Ashcroft, or did they bid on Lombard on the night?
They might have been.
It's just kind of fuckery. It's just keeping the clubs who are linked to those players honest.
Yeah, the Ashcroft one came a bit further down than people were expecting.
Yeah, it's like I think around pick 5, I think it was. Yeah. Whoever had that pick. But yeah, as it turned out, Cripper, Parks, the team there, as far as I'm led to believe, knew exactly what they were doing, and we got some genuine talent that we can work with. That, as you just said, and as it's become prevalent online, a lot of people valued them a lot higher than what they eventually slid down to, which I guess is a positive, and it's something that we're not unfamiliar with. Now, a little bit of conjecture depending on what side of the fence from a Port Adelaide fan base you see it, like Berry's a small forward. We've got a lot of small forwards. I think the argument that the basket that I would sit in is that the quality of small forward is probably the question rather than the quantity of small forward. And as it's become apparent in the modern era, and even going back a little ways, small forwards seem to be game changers in big games, particularly finals. So that's where I listened to someone doing a mock draft, and he kind of alluded to the fact that like even key position players aren't necessarily, unless they're fucking guns, I think clubs are more looking to bolster their small forward stocks with quality small forwards rather than like a key position player to develop, because they can make an impact, they're versatile in the modern game, and yeah, they seem to be the game breakers. So I'm happy to bring a Robbie Gray-esque type player.
Yeah.
If we can uncrack that nut and reveal his true talent and develop that, as we have pretty good form in doing. I'm probably not one who was keen to get a tall forward, if anything, because I think we do have a plethora of tall forwards. Now, again, maybe I'm contradicting myself where I just said small forwards is quality over quantity. the argument there is if we have quality key position forwards,
Mhm.
albeit we have a lot of them. And we did just delist Tom Scully. So
It was
while
one that
acknowledged,
a lot of us were
yeah, so I
thinking
was
might,
definitely
yeah,
surprised.
yeah.
Yeah, so they're just going for another development player who, yeah, as you said, who's been ranked highly, slid. So
Mhm.
again, if we can tap that potential, it will be an interesting next 5 years, hopefully. And yeah, Moraes was definitely endearing to Port Adelaide fans immediately with the way that he carried himself, like you mentioned,
Yeah,
um,
really well.
acknowledging the club and the fan base and the culture and whatnot. We were talking pre-recording how endearing that is, but also how interesting it is for a Victorian in the Eastern Ranges of
Mm.
Victoria to acknowledge that, to know that, to be aware of that, and ultimately, yeah, be over the moon uh, to move states and come to a club that he knows or he has the perception of having a good culture and a good fan base. So um, that's warming to the heart of a Port Adelaide fan, of course, and um, yeah, just keen to see how all these guys develop. We have a good track record, but yeah, draft night is one thing. It's how these guys go in their footy careers, and there's a whole lot of variables to come for these guys. And then I've just mentioned that uh, Cochrane is cool in the fact that yeah, there's that father son link.
Mm.
I don't have high hopes for him immediately, but absolutely wish him all the very best. And but the player that I am very interested in is Barrett,
Yeah.
and our Category B selection, who has been training with us, as alluded to in the Port Adelaide socials. Put up a little clip introduced of where Jeff Parker, that is, introduced the new draftees to the club or to the first to 4 year players,
Mm.
and anyone else who was already there too.
I believe Butters has come
And
back early
yeah,
too, which is good.
yeah, there's quite a few. Yeah, I watched
Mm.
Jace Burgoyne's press conference, albeit a small press conference, but he mentioned that there was quite a number of senior guys not necessarily doing uh, in-depth skills training like the young guys were, but whether they're lifting weights in the gym or doing just some general running stuff. And that included, yeah, Zach Butters. But
Mm.
Benny Barrett is interesting because, yeah, Parks alluded to the fact that he's been training already, being an academy prospect
Mm.
or a Cat B prospect, and he looks pretty well ready made. He looks explosive. He's got a good build. I know there's some Twitter, some people who do follow some of these up and comers, who are quite buoyed by his potential.
Yeah.
Again, a small forward, an impactful small forward type player, who can immediately. Oh, I won't say immediately. I don't know that for sure, but he has the makings to really improve the quality in our forward third.
Yeah.
Um, so that's pretty exciting in that regard. I probably would have liked to look at a key position defender to develop, but in saying that, and I know he's been used as a bit of a utility for the Magpies, but I'm actually really keen to see Xavier Walsh improve,
Mm.
who spent he was last draftee from last year, or actually he was a rookie pick, I believe, last year.
I feel like he was,
If he
yeah.
wasn't, he was a late pick.
Mm.
But I'm pretty sure he's a rookie selection. I like him as an up and coming defender. I just think he still needs a bit of work. So
Mm.
that's probably an area that I would have liked to uh, just get a project player, if anything, because like Scully up forward, we let go of McCullum and Kyle Marshall, too, who were our previous two development defenders.
And then, yeah,
And all
obviously,
three of those people were all from the same draft.
yeah. Yeah, no, I've I opened my box. I literally just opened some people, like I was over in the US and I had some people know that I like my AFL card collecting and I buy boxes of product and I've got a McCullum and Marshall auto out of my boxes that I only opened a couple of months ago now, when I got back from the US and they got delisted like a month later. Like I didn't even get to.
Yeah,
Because,
shit.
yeah.
You shouldn't
So
have opened that box.
usually I'm stoked to get like port players when obviously I collect port players. So when I get them in boxes, it's even better. I did get the previous year, I got a Jason Horn-Francis. So I've got a draft pick autograph of him. Obviously, he's in his
I think I've seen
Kangaroos
that.
colors. But yeah, I've got that one, and when it's always special when you open it a bot like yourself. Like I buy a lot of cards too, like my Jace Burgoyne ones. I bought them all, but yeah, having the ones. But yeah, the port players that got drafted last year haven't been a great buy, or getting them in boxes. But this year's crop will be an exciting one to get cards of next. They'll be in next year's product. Because yeah, it'll be just be really really fun to it's a really nice like this is the thing with all the machinations of the Dan Houston draft and everything that went Dan Houston trade to get into the draft. Joe Richards wrapped up in that as well. A lot of people just because we got Joe Richards and he's had a decent little 9 games for Collingwood this year, it's just automatic that he's in the side. We don't know if he's going to make day one squad yet.
Oh, we
SPP,
hope so.
we do, yes, but
For his profile, but yeah, we don't know.
And SPP's coming back from a knee injury. We don't know how his form's going to be immediately. Like, because everyone's just going, oh, this is our forward line already, so there's no room for. And it's also draftees from this year. Well, Zach Butters, Connor Rozee, a lot of guys do come in early if they've got the talent. A lot of guys do break in. Like Jace Burgoyne's been in the system for a few years. He didn't break in properly until this year. Josh Sinn's been in a couple of years. He's for some reason brought up as a stick to beat the list management team with now that we traded up to get him. He's had injury hits, but he's had some promising signs. The path forward to an AFL career isn't always linear. Yes, the great talents, your obvious choices like your Nick Dacos or your Will Ashcrofts of recent years. And looking out,
Francis's.
Yes, yeah. They play day one, and they're going to be clear talents. Some players that are going to be clear talents don't break in right away. Travis spoke
because they're being drafted as
yeah,
children, like they're legal adults, but they're children. Like,
yeah,
they've still got so much growth.
both
So many
physically,
facets,
and mentally, is
absolutely.
most importantly of all.
Yeah, for sure, for 100%. Like, there's the first round, all it gets you is pressure as a player, and then as a club to make sure that player plays 200 games. Like, the draft is so subjective, and like it offers a lot of young men and women in the AFLW an opportunity, and it's up to the club and the development staff and the player ultimately to fulfill any sort of potential that they can and improve. So we're beneficiaries of some genuine diamonds in the rough, and we're not the only club in saying that. Every club gets late draft picks who develop into fantastic players. It's on your club and our club in this regard to develop them. So yeah, I guess just what you brought up, Joe Richards, which sparked something in my mind, and it was again something we were talking about pre-recording, and that's about the fact that, and this relates to the trade as well, that draft night, particularly for non-Victorian sides, isn't just about who the best player is at your pick. For non-Victorian sides in particular, there is another 1, 2, 3 layers of strategy that has to go into it because, they want to pick up a great talent, but they also want to make sure that that player stays or potentially contributes to a good environment that other people want to stay in.
Yeah.
And I know that, so again, it's much harder for non-Victorian clubs to trade in A-grade talent unless that player is originally from the state that you're trying to trade them into. For Victorian sides, it's considering that I think it's over 50% of talent comes out of Victoria, like in terms of draft and whatnot, and rookie selections. It's much easier for Victorian sides to trade back players and A-grade talent because that's the mecca of football, whether you like it or not. Now on draft night, I'll note. So we selected Joe Berry, who's a Vic country. So generally, non-Victorian clubs go for so Vic country if they're going to select out of Victoria, because they feel they're less likely to want to go back to Melbourne because they're not actually from Melbourne. And that's fair enough. I completely agree with that. I think it's a decent strategy. Brisbane, GWS, even, the Western Australian, that we all do it. But I'll note that, so we traded in Joe Richards, and then we drafted in Joe Berry. And I thought it was interesting. I just found through the, I think, Facebook feed that they're actually both from the Wangaratta Football Club. So if you're going back to junior roots and things like that, they're from the same local football club. And then as an extension of Joe Berry, him and Jack Whitlock also played for the Murray Bushrangers, and both played for Vic Country. So whether that's intentional, it definitely would have come into consideration. Again, trying to make sure that the players that you bring into your club are comfortable. Obviously, I think that our club is great at making players feel welcome, feel comfortable, and I tip my cap to our ability to retain a lot of the players that we bring in. But whether that kind of those links contributed to draft night, to some extent, the fact that they're all linked in some sort of a way has to play some sort of a part. That's why you generally find brothers of good players get some sort of a go at various clubs around the league, because ultimately you want players to stay, you want players to feel comfortable, and you want an environment where they want to improve out of sight. My brother's here, I've got to do fucking well. I think Josh Dacos improved once Nick got drafted, because I don't want to be upstaged by my brother. Like, fucking, I just thought it was an interesting note and an interesting discussion point, to the factor of how that comes into trade and draft. I don't know, but I can't help but think that it plays a small part in it, particularly for a non-Victorian football club.
Well, relationships and culture, I mean, in any sport is really important, but, there's a lot of the bigger sports around the world that, a lot of that can be covered up by, adding a couple of million to a contract. But in AFL football, where $1 million contracts are the top of the sport, relationships and stuff are really important. And, we've even seen, just we were talking about it, the Robbie Gray factor in just him being a part of the recruiting team, and the scouting and that advanced work that he does. These players have grown up watching Robbie Gray play, so how much of an impact that has, and his
Joe Berry mentioned that in a pre-draft interview.
Yeah, and Joe Berry, I think I read that he was a Sydney Swans fan growing up, so it's not like he was a Port fan, but he was, his player that he modelled his game after was Robbie Gray. So, and Robbie Gray, having come from Victoria and become a lifelong player career-long player at Port Adelaide, Travis Boak still being there as another player that's played, getting, he's beyond 350 games now, Boakey, and he's a player from, the Victoria. Like, there's a lot of our best players in AFL history and players that are really, really well known to Victorian kids are guys that came from Victoria and came over and made a career-long commitment to Port Adelaide and have great things to say about it. So, relationships and stuff like that is important. Even beyond, like, obviously you're talking about the connections between them, but even just connections across generations and what they see happen and how they perceive relationships. I think that speaks to what Marias was saying as well, is like he's grown up and he seems to have a mature and already just reading between the lines of what Marias was saying in his post-draft little interview spot on Fox Sports, was like, this is a guy that understands, like, he loves footy and he takes a keen interest in how in the footy culture and all those things. And so he's probably noticed, I would say that Marias, says at his age, has already noted kind of those kind of relationships and those little intertwining things between generations and the likes of Robbie Gray.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for his teen years, he's watched the Port Adelaide Football Club consistently play finals.
Yeah.
So it's a good, reflective piece on our own fans who,
Yeah.
we, we all want to win a premiership. We want to win it. But just some of the aspects of how your football club operates and how that permeates through the country. It's when we've grown up, we take note of the clubs that not only the club that we support, but the club that we're coming up against in finals and things like that. It makes an impact and it's reflective on you as a kid. And yeah, clearly, Moraes, like you said, he's spent his formative years watching Port play finals, so he already has a bit of a positive perception on us as a club. And now he gets drafted and he's like, fuck yeah. Like, I'm going to a club that I've built a respect for. Again, reading between the lines, and that's great. You mentioned Zach Butters as well before, and to go on my original point is that I found it interesting that we're trialing, is it Jack Watkins?
Yes, I meant to bring him
SSP?
up as well. The Kangaroos best and fairest winner in their VFL
or
side.
captain, one of the
Captain,
two.
yeah. I think he might have
Maybe
been up there
both.
in BNF. I think he might have been up there in
But
BNF,
he has a link to Zach Butters as well.
Oh, does he? I haven't.
As far as I know, I may feel free anyone to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain I've heard on multiple channels that he does have a link to Zach Butters. Maybe they're friends from growing up, or through talent pathways or something of that effect, something to that effect. So if that is in fact true, again, it's interesting in that relationships, culture, just added incentive for people to stay.
He's won back-to-back VFL best and fairest this year. So he's being it. So
VFL best and fairest. Or North
sorry, best and fairest for the VFL side. So best and fairest at North
VFL
Melbourne.
Side.
Yeah.
And
there's two articles that are calling him Butters like VFL star. So, god damn it, it's a subscriber only article. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, and then Jace Burgoyne said that they'd asked him how Jack Watkins had trained, because he arrived for first to fourth year players, obviously trying his darndest to get a spot on our list. And even Jay said, they asked him how he kind of goes about it, what type of player he's like. He's like, Jay said, oh yeah, he's a bit like Butsy in the way that he goes about it, like just really full on with their footy. And like the journalists were like, whoa, geez, that's a big call. Like if he's like Zach Butters, that'd be a great pickup.
Yeah.
So look, I think they're linked. I truly believe I've heard that. And if it is true, then yeah, just interesting point on the whole culture building exercise that is AFL football list.
Yeah, and I think we've shown a great propensity for bringing players in, no matter where they come from, over the last 10 years, and them, if they want to be a part of it, they I mean, obviously, if a player wants to come back to South Australia, and we can target them, we do. But our draft and trade strategy doesn't ever seem purely linked to, they're a Port fan or a South Australian. Like, if they're a South Australian want to come back, we'll go after them. But we seem to have trust in our culture that we can go out and, as you said, you're going out for Vic Country guys more than you are Vic Metro. But it seems like, the Crows, again, not wanting to beat down on the opposition team in our state, though it's something I enjoy greatly. But a big thing with them was, like, there was in the lead up to the draft, it was like, do they trade up even more and try to get that Jagger Smith, who is another player that's got some real comparable, a lot of analysis comparisons to Zach Butters, and watching some of his, I can see why he looks like a fucking special player. But all the stuff that the Crows fans were talking about, just seeing you see the stuff filter into your feed, was like, oh, well, but do you go for the homegrown player, or do you go for the guy that's, maybe better but is from Victoria? And it's just like, that was all their reasoning. I was just like, it just doesn't seem like, I feel like we just go for the guy that was like the best player. So I think we do consider that stuff too. I'm not saying we're that much better, but I think there is a little bit more of, we would maybe take the chance. But yeah, it was interesting
And I
watching
think
that.
they've got a lot more pressure on them to make it work right
Yes.
now.
They've had some big misses in the draft, and a couple of those guys they picked was Chase Jones, the one from Tassie that went back for a couple of weeks and took. And again, I'm not beaten down, but they had that drama of him taking a break from footy to go back home in the middle of a
I
season.
don't know if that was him. Fisher
Oh no,
Mackesy
that was Fisher Mackesy,
was
yeah,
the
and he's
yeah.
now.
Chase Jones was who they picked before we selected Zach Butters.
That's right, yeah. Clearly, I don't spend too much time with Crows drafting analysis. You just hear the stuff filter through, but yeah, no, it's a really pleasing draft. It was interesting because I come at it from I did say this on. I was having a discussion with a few people, and then I went to work, and I came back to like 30 notifications of a conversation that had just continued as I was working, and I just was like, I left it after that. And it was actually like it was a good conversation. It was just people, discussing differences of opinion on the draft. And I just interject. I just said, look, I think the Joe Berry pick, because that was some people wanted. There was another tool forward. I can't think of his name. Who only went one or two picks before he picked up Whitlock in the end. He slid as well.
I think there was Shanahan
That's
was
the one.
one
Job
that
Shanahan.
was
That's the one. That's the one a couple of people wanted with our first pick. He almost got to our second pick, and then we ended up picking up the other guy that we wanted. Maybe we take Shanahan if he's there. I assume we do because he was similar and I think rated a little bit higher. But I'm stoked with Whitlock that he seems great as well. I interject. My Joe Berry thing at the time was like, well, you've got to take him. There's a mixture of needs and then just taking the talent as well. You can't. And as a Portland Trailblazers fan of the NBA, anyone that knows NBA history will know this story well. The Portland Trailblazers had Michael Jordan on the board and picked, but went with needs and picked Sam Bowie, a center, a big man, who played a few years and just went away. But whereas Michael Jordan, as we know, went on to, well, it depends on who you root for, but consensus greatest of all time player, and we all know whether it be winning championships with the Bulls or defeating the Monstars in the battle for Space Jam.
in Space Jam.
Yeah, one of the greatest of all time. That was a needs based pick that they and Michael Jordan was not. He was the greatest talent in that draft, but teams back then were still so beholden to needs. And then the Blazers also could have had Kevin Durant. They went with Greg Oden instead, which didn't work out well because Greg Oden didn't have knees. Greg Oden, that's a little bit more a discussion because people that talk about Greg Oden's a high state career say that he was genuinely a great prospect.
But that's a good point to say that even if you do get the best fucking pick, they could just get fucking injured. And there's nothing that you can do. So
it was still consensus with people behind the scenes that were looking at draft workouts and stuff. Were still saying Kevin Durant's the guy. Who
went first in the Jordan draft? He was a good fucking player too.
There was it was because Bowie went second, Jordan went 3. So there was another team that passed on Jordan too, but. It's still
it's gonna bug me, but because he's a legend as well, and there's no sure Miss Jordan, but I can't remember who it was. It's gonna bug me now, and we're not even an NBA podcast.
Love the game though. It was it was Hakeem. Duh.
Hakeem Olajuwon. Yeah. See, no one's complaining about that pick.
Yeah,
like you said.
Oh fuck that! Oh, fucking Blazers passed on Hakeem.
This is an AFL. This is an AFL podcast.
No, sorry, the Blazers didn't pass on Hakeem, but fucking Barkley went after that as well. It's just like fuck's sake, Portland. Fuck me. Anyway, at least they drafted Bill Walton in the 70s.
So yeah, that's all right.
Oh yeah. Well, at least you got Giddy, so that's fun.
It makes me giddy.
Yeah. But yeah, I was thinking this is the tangent, but which is what we do. But yeah, it's needs based versus, and I think what Port did. I was about to say what the Blazers did, but what Port did, because the Blazers didn't do it. What Port did is that they, at 15, Joe Berry was talent, and maybe small forward isn't the top need, but he's clearly the best talent. in his draft profile on Rookie Central, they say he's arguably one of the top two small forwards available in this year's draft. The other, Isaac Kako, is tied to Essendon. So he was the only openly available, according to decent analysis, one of the top two small forwards in the draft, and the only one that was openly available to the actual open draft. Obviously, you can bid on whoever you want, but generally at that point, especially in the draft, they get taken or matched. And so, yeah, you take it. Even if you think your top need isn't the small forward, you've got to take talent that's there, and he's the one. And then, as we've seen,
they clearly wanted him because we traded up by a selection.
Also, massive confusion on the night.
Yeah, and if I can just clear that up for anyone who's still a bit confused, I think it's fairly widely accepted now that if we didn't trade for that pick, then Freo would have traded for that pick and got Berry, who they were red hot on as well. So we didn't waste a pick when we were just going to pick him anyway. We would have lost that opportunity had we not done that, as far as I believe, and I'm pretty sure it's fairly well accepted that that's the case now. And pick 45, we've just spent a bit of time talking about gems, diamonds in the rough and stuff, but it's
but if you don't get the player, if you've not done the trade and Freo get Berry and then you just draft someone else that you kind of maybe rush, because the draft is a constantly flowing, moving process. And if Freo had jumped us and then we hadn't got the pick, then we would have maybe, who knows who we take. Maybe we take another great player. Like there's that Murphy Reed that was there that I think Freo ended up taking. He was one that a lot of people wanted as well. So we would have, I don't think at that point we lose a pick, but we get who we want, which is a great thing. And then as people's, a lot of people's needs fans are a little more narrow focused than people that are professionally involved in it. The need, everyone was just like, we need to take a tall forward, or a key position defender was the other one. We didn't take either, and everyone's like, oh no, some people, a lot of people were genuinely like, oh no, this is a great pick. But then, we get to pick 33 and a guy that was top 20 rated still gets picked, and we get that tall forward anyway. Yeah. So that's the thing I was thinking about on the night. I think I texted you, which is very funny because your text back was like, I'm too drunk to read this. I was quite like, I can't remember why I'm too drunk to taste this chicken. That was the vibes of your text back. But I sent a diatribe about just how the macro of it is like, there's the moving pieces of a draft is just, there's so many other teams that are doing so many different things. You never know exactly what, but you're going to have teams, professional recruiters and everyone have an idea and understand how these things are going to flow. And with such a deep draft, probably took a chance that one of these guys were probably going to flow down to the 30s, and they were going to get them anyway. So it kind of like, just works out. And it's a fascinating process to watch. I watched both nights of the draft. There's a lot of criticism of the TV aspect of it, which I'm just like, it's not the NFL. Like I watch the NFL draft, I watch NBA, I watch the hockey, I watch the NHL draft, which is fun as well. The NHL draft this year was from the Sphere in Vegas, which was insane.
Oh, cool.
It was very, very cool visually. But the AFL draft clearly doesn't have the production budget behind it. The NFL draft moves cities every year and has a massive party, and people just get wasted. So we're talking different things, but as far as just me as an AFL fan, I really enjoyed watching it and watching the kind of drama and teams picking who they weren't expecting.
Well, and the butterfly effect, which you alluded to, it's fluid. Like, I know there's some clubs ahead of us that picked some players who no one thought that they were going to take that type of player.
Yeah, you get someone.
St Kilda comes to mind. They went in. A lot of people thought they were going to go after midfielders, and they selected a couple of half-backers or something to that effect. And then again, they had back-to-back picks, and then everything just kind of flows on from there. West Coast played the game, risking the local talent in Bo Allen, and then he ended up going to them anyway because it is an interesting.
The St Kilda ones are interesting too because I think they just took the talent that was available. Like they just went, look, this guy, you're kind of stupid to pass on this guy, so you've got to take him. even if it's not the needs-based thing, because they are, but they're loading up for free agency coming up as well. So they're not going for a premiership this year anyway. So it's like they're going to try to build towards some big free agents and the player moving across. And that's the modern AFL as well. Is like sometimes you're building to things 1 to 2 years out that maybe fans aren't quite cognizant of, but list managers and it's a tough process as a fan too, because you just want to be a decent football team every year. Unfortunately, but the modern sports and drafts. The draft is essentially an American invention, and we've brought it into our sport over the last 30, 40 years, and it's great, but it does mean that there's ebbs and flows in how, and that's the whole machinations and the design of it is teams go up and down. And with the modern AFL and with free agency and all those things, list managers are going to look to things 1 to 2 years out. Sometimes that you aren't even aware are available. But that's what teams are doing. Yeah, St Kilda is a great example of fan expectations versus what actually happened on the night, and as another an outside example that isn't. It shows that Port Adelaide isn't the only team that does these things, and they had a night. They had a night that some people are still scratching their heads about, but they might come out okay, because we don't know at the end of the day. Just as we were actually lauded for our draft night in the end, if none of these guys, no, knock on wood, all of these guys are going to play some significant footy for Port at some point, but maybe none of them do or one of them does. We don't know at this point. But as we look at it now, we got 2 steals later in our second and third picks, and our first pick was right in the range of where he should have been picked. And analysis says he's probably the top small forward that was available to the open draft as well. So take what you can get. And do it educatedly. And I think our list management team and our recruitment team had a real plan going in and executed it perfectly. So,
as they do. And there has been a bit of shade transfer onto them over this exchange period as a whole. And it just goes to show, where frustration can lead you, just to kind of, find anyone to sink your claws into if you're unhappy with the club at large. These guys don't usually get it wrong. I have pretty high confidence in them, and I'm pretty content with where it all ended up. I much like trades, much like anything, these are only really judged in a few years' time. So that's I'll hold sway. By all accounts, as you said, we did a pretty good job, and by external analysis as well, not just internal. That's all we've got to go on, and I'm pretty impressed, and I'm pretty keen to see how they develop now that they're in our 4 walls.
I'll be taking a keen interest on any footage that comes out of training, off-season training, and I don't know what the what open training is going to come in the next couple of months, but I might try to shoot down for one here and there and just check out what they're looking like on the track and all that stuff. But I guess my last point that I thought of earlier today too, when I was just as podcast day comes, I start thinking about things to talk about, as I'm sure you know as well. I find it interesting because we often, when Port Adelaide players that we love are retiring, we're like, get him involved in the club somehow, get him involved to change the culture. That's the kind of,
that's
some of the
romanticism.
stuff. But then you've got Robbie Gray in the draft room. Clearly, they're drafting a player that he's hot on, and people are complaining about it. I'm like, this is what you guys want. Like this is actually what happens.
This is
like Robbie Gray's a beloved player, and I'm like, it's not. I'm not attacking anyone for it. It's just like it is funny that we see, like, because now with Travis Spoke, when it was talked about that he could possibly, I think there was that rumor about him going to Collingwood at one point. It's like being offered a position, and people are like, no, man, you need to make sure guys like him stay. And I'm like, well, Robbie Gray's involved, and he's like, people are complaining about our draft. So,
damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Exactly. But hopefully, I mean, we all know the story of Robbie Gray's involvement and kind of just earmarking Zach Butters as a talent and how well that worked out. So, hopefully he's got that magic touch again. But clearly, like Joe Berry, beyond Robbie Gray's acknowledgement of him, it's clear that Joe Berry was a highly rated player coming into this draft. And in a deep draft, he's still got
Lockie.
Sorry,
is it Lockie Charlison? From was it last year's draft? he was a Robbie pick. I
Yes,
thought it was
yeah.
Dorga Renz, but I've been corrected since. I think it's
Okay.
Charlison who was the previous Robbie pick, and
Yeah.
he hasn't made an impact yet. So
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
speculative.
Yeah, that's the
Not that I
end of
don't have hope for Lockie Charlison. I have a lot of hope for him from
Yeah.
being a Robbie pick. But
It is also the fact we've
got to still let him develop.
Yeah, and we've still got a decent team on the field, like our starting 22. Obviously, we've lost Dan Houston from it. There's still a lot of players, more senior players that are still trying to get into that side too. So, so all these players,
we'll run the rule over that. In
a couple of weeks.
Final show. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. But yeah, unless you've got anything else, I think that about wraps it up for tonight, which is
that about does it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, as we hit just tick past 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. So I have tomorrow off, thankfully, but I know Jamie probably doesn't. So we should wrap it up and call it for the night. But yeah, our last review of the season, obviously the women's lost in the prelim, but good to chat about the draft as well. That's about it. Thank you to Jamie, by the way. Obviously, it's not the last podcast we're going to do, but it's the last review we're going to do for 2024. So I appreciate Jamie coming on board this year. He's added a lot of flavor and just saved me from the insanity of talking to myself. So, the podcast is immensely better for you being on it. So I appreciate you being a part of it now. So,
thanks for bringing me on. It's definitely better to bounce low lights and highlights on off another person. So and like you said, we'll touch on a couple of other things, or we'll record another show at least and wrap it all up. But pleasure to be here.
No, thank you, and thank you to everyone listening as well. For those of you that have been here since day dot a few years ago when I was doing it, as I said, on my own, slowly losing my sanity, or particularly this year, those that have come on board and all the feedback we've been getting has been great. So, love you all. Can't the pair. 2024 is a wrap as far as playing goes, but being the fact we're already almost in December, 2025.
Nearly Christmas.
Yeah. As I said, we'll do a review episode in a couple of weeks, and then whatever we need to do in the off-season period if anything comes up. But otherwise, I'm already really excited to crack into 2025, and it's coming up quick, so there won't be too long of a break. It might feel like for a bit, but 2025 is going to be here before you know it. But for now, calm the fucking pair.
The power.